Hey guys, Nick here. Today we're going to install a fifth wheel hitch into this 2017 GMC Denali HD. So this is going to get a SuperGlide fifth wheel hitch, so an automatic slider because it is a short bed. But there's nothing in the bed of this truck yet. So first we're going to start with the installation of the base rails and the frame brackets. So I'm going to do the best job I can to kind of take you through that process and show you exactly what it looks like. Okay, the very first thing we're going to do is check the parts content of the mounting kit. For this particular install, we're going to use part number 2762 from Polaroid. This is a custom mounting system, so there's a lot of benefits with going with the custom mounts. The brackets are basically tailored to the frame of the truck, so it's a lot simpler. First thing we're going to do is go to the exploded view parts list and kind of do a piece check of everything. Lay out our brackets just to make sure that we have all the correct brackets here. Of course, there's a bag of hardware. What I like to do is just pull everything out of the box and cross-reference it with the parts list. Just make sure I have everything that I need before I get started. Alright, so we're left with a couple of base rails here, 4 brackets, which I am going to check against this exploded view and parts list. Okay, so the very first step, once we've checked all of our parts and make sure everything's here, we're going to find the serrated flange nuts, and they actually get clamped into this nut tab on the bracket. This is one of the huge advantages of the custom kits. So to put that in, all we're going to do is bend the tab out just enough to fit the nut in here. We'll just take a pair of pliers and bend the tab back up. That way that nut's already in the bracket. You'll see a little bit later on why that's a huge benefit. So we'll go ahead and finish that up on the other 3 brackets and then get ready to put the brackets on the frame of the truck. All right, now that we got the nuts into the nut tabs on the brackets, you can see we've started spraying these holes. This particular bracket kit is going to tie into these factory holes right here. Sometimes these accumulate a little bit of crud just from because they're in the fender well or on the frame of the truck. So I always spray them out with WD, kind of flushes any loose dirt out of there and allows the bolts to go in a little easier. Then we'll take the front driver's side bracket. I got to put it at an angle here a little bit. All these brackets are going to be a tight fit just because we want them to sit fairly close to the bed of the truck. These bolts are just going to tap right into the frame. Do the same with the rear bracket. Lining up those holes. I don't want to tighten these all the way. I'm just making sure my bolts don't fall out. Okay, now we're just going to repeat that process with the passenger side brackets on the passenger side of the truck. All right, so we're back here at the back of the truck. We've gotten those frame brackets that we left off with last time. We got those installed onto the frame. They're loosely fit on the frame, so the bolts aren't tightened down. They're just snug. That way the bracket can still move a little tiny bit. Now we're ready to start putting our holes through the bed of the truck. This is the hard part, because you're going to be drilling through the sheet metal of your truck. This is the stuff that's really visible if you mess it up. So there's a couple of ways of doing it. The instructions will have basically a layout form that tells you exactly how to lay out the bed. So you can hop in there with a pencil and chalk and actually square it up and get your 4 holes, your exact locations. That takes an extra 20 minutes or so to lay that all out. So another option with these Polaroid kits is to use a template. These templates are a separate item, but they're used for multiple installations. So this template, we can just throw it in the bed of the truck, and what we're going to do is center it side to side, and then there's one dimension that we measure from the back edge of the bed to the back edge of the template. We simply position that template that far from the bed of the truck, and we have all the holes that are necessary to drill for the that are going to match up with the frame brackets. Now, I always encourage with starting with a small pilot hole. We're going to use a 1/16 of an inch drill bit to go ahead and puncture our pilot bits, just to make sure everything lines up properly. Last thing we want to do is put these holes in the wrong spot. If a 1/16 inch hole is in the wrong location, it might be off by a 1/2 inch or so. It's still going to cover when you drill that larger hole. So that's why we always start with that pilot bit. So I'm going to go ahead and get this template centered up in the bed. We're calling for 24 9/16 of an inch from the edge of the bed, the back surface of the bed. So I'll go ahead and center it up on the ribs. You can see we look at these ribs and try to center it there. Also, there's a center line mark on this template. We're going to be at 24 9/16, just a shade over 24 1/2. I'm going to start in the center, but then I'll go out to each side and measure that same dimension, just to make sure that square template's square in the bed. Okay, we are about as close as we're going to get with a tape measure here. So now we're ready to just do the drilling in the bed. Now you can get a focus on that template, or on this template sheet here. This shows you the exact locations and where at in the template to drill. So what I'm going to do is actually start up here with the driver's side front, and we're going to drill that hole, and then I'll climb underneath the truck and see how that drilled hole matches up with the frame bracket that we've already installed. Now, one other point I should make, one thing that we didn't video is actually lowering the spare tire. The spare tire does fit underneath the back of these trucks, so before I take a drill bit, I always drop that spare tire. I always look underneath the bed of that truck just to look for any electrical lines, fuel tank, anything that would be expensive if I drill through it. I want to avoid all that, so I got the template set. I'm going to actually climb under the truck bed, take a look at a few locations just to know that I'm going to have clearance for that drill bit to come through the bed, and then I'll hop back up here and we'll be back with you guys to actually drill these holes in the bed. All right, so according to our sheet, you can see the blacked out hole. We're not in this row, but we're in the second row, so the center part of the base rail. We're one hole in from the outside edge, so it's going to put me right here. I'm going to be sure to hold my drill bit perfectly perpendicular. Try not to move that template much. right, so we drilled this first hole in the bed, and when we got through the bed, we actually hit the edge of the frame bracket here. So what we need to do is actually move, so the frame bracket's on like this, we hit the back edge of the frame bracket. So what that means is we're gonna have to move forward. According to my measurement here, we're gonna have to move forward about 3/16 of an inch. So we're gonna go ahead and move this hole 3/16 of an inch forward, and then we will basically pivot the template off of that hole there. That gives us all of our other spacing accurately. So I'm going to go ahead and do that second hole here, 3/16 of an inch straight forward from that right now. All right, I find when I'm doing an adjustment like this, it's easiest just to lay the tape measure next to it. I mean, I could mark it, or I could just sink the drill bit 3/16 of an inch forward. This is bed liner, so I can kind of sink that bit into it a little bit so it doesn't walk. Right there. So now we'll go ahead and slap the frame bracket back on there one more time, just to make sure that we do line up perfectly with that nut. All right, so this second hole, this forward hole, actually lines up perfect with the bracket where we need it to be. So all I need to do is center my template around that hole. Make sure I go into the right one here. And I'll just leave my drill there for a moment and pivot the template right on that. Square it up. Then I'm going to check my measurement from the back edge of the bed one more time, and we should be perfect. All right, there we go. We're going to go ahead and drill the other 4 holes. This is pretty uneventful, so we'll go ahead and do that without recording it. When we get back, we're going to be opening up those holes to larger holes to accept the bolts to drop down through the bed. So with that said, we'll be back in just a moment. All right, there we go. We're going to go ahead and drill the other 4 holes. This is pretty uneventful, so we'll go ahead and do that without recording it. When we get back, we're going to be opening up those holes to larger holes to accept the bolts to drop down through the bed. So with that said, we'll be back in just a moment. All right, now what we need to do is open that front hole up large enough to accept a 5/8 bolt. So we're going to go probably about 3/4 of an inch in diameter. The way I like to do these or drill this out is using a step bit. Now we will have to pull the bracket off to drill it with the step bit, just to make sure, because this does have to go through the bed of the truck. I usually use a series of step bits. This one opens that hole up a little bit more, and then I have a larger step bit that takes a little bit bigger of a pilot bit to begin with. So we're going to start with this one, and we're going to open that front hole up a little bit. You can see as we go deeper and deeper, it just opens that hole up a little bit more. Now we'll go ahead and switch out to this step bit. It's going to fit in there nicely, and it's going to slowly open it all the way up to, we'll probably stop about 3/4 of an inch right in there. So then we're going to do that to all 4 corners, and then we're ready to set the base rails. All right, now that we've got the frame brackets on the truck, we've gotten these holes opened up. You can actually see the frame bracket here inside the hole. We're not absolutely perfect, but we're pretty darn close. We're back a shade, which that's fine. There's that, remember at the beginning of the video when we put the nuts inside the bracket and actually clamped them into position? What we need to do is find that nut here in the slot and just center it up. That way it's centered up right down through that hole. Then, because the frame bracket's tight against the bed, we need to fill this channel with material. That way we're not smashing anything down when we're tightening down the base rail to the frame. So we take this spacer. There's no right or wrong. It could go either way. I try to put the groove in the center. Then we take this tube spacer, and that gets kind of put right over the top of it. That way, when we set the base rail, everything lines right up, and we can just thread our bolt in from the top. So having that nut already on the tab like that, oh, I need my conical tooth washer, getting ahead of myself here. Just having that nut tab on the bracket already, that's huge, because if you didn't have that, you'd have to have somebody else under the bed of the truck with a flat washer, a lock washer, and a nut. With this, we can tighten everything from the bed of the truck. So I'm just going to loosely put that on there, that way it's tied down. Then we'll go ahead and come up here and do the same to the cab side on the driver's side of the truck. Already got that nut in position there. Set our tube spacer. Now we'll go ahead and do the same thing to the passenger side. All right, well, we've gotten the frame brackets installed, base rails installed, everything is loosely fitted down, so now we're ready to start torquing things. Some people just use an impact on this stuff. I prefer to torque. I use torque to the manufacturer's specs. The pull rate kits have a page that has all the torque table with all the different torque measurements or torque values. So the order that we're going to torque these, we're going to actually torque the base rails and then proceed to torque the frame brackets afterwards. So these base rails, everything's in place, really just good to go. I'm going to ensure that they're 22 inches apart front to back. That's what industry standard base rails should be at, is 22 inches. Once I confirm that it's 22 inches, I'll go ahead and torque all 4 of the bolts. All right, so now we'll go ahead and torque the frame bracket to the frame of the truck. I've paired up with a nice long extension. You can see the 4 bolts in there that we're torquing. All right, then we'll do the same to the driver's side. All right, everything's torqued on this mounting kit. The installation kit is in the truck. The only other thing we need to do is there's a requirement for an additional tie bolt that gets put right here on the base rail. One on this base rail and one on this base rail. We could have drilled this with the template, but I typically just wait to get the base rail in and then use that as my template. I'm just going to drill large enough to fit a 1/2 inch bolt through there. So I'm going to go just a shade larger than a 1/2 inch. I'm going to drill this hole and I'm going to drill this hole and then install the bolt in there with the backer plate underneath the frame. Definitely worth using a good drill bit to do that. Goes right through the material without a problem. So now we'll go ahead and blow this out one more time. And what we're going to install here are these 1/2-inch bolts. They'll just drop down through the bed. Underneath, there'll be a backer plate with a nut, and that just gets tightened up. So essentially we're just sandwiching the material of that bed. It gives us a little bit higher capacity with this type of rail kit. All right, we have gotten the SuperGlide out of the box and up here onto the bed of the truck. In the box there was a hitch and then the set of hardware. In the hardware there's 4 of these feet. These are designed to pin into the base rail, and then they actually bolt onto the bottom of the hitch. So that's what we're going to do now. The easiest way to do this is actually to set the feet first. Now, you'll notice each side of this base rail has 3 sets of slots. This particular SuperGlide is going to use the center set. And all this stuff's right there in that bag. So just like that, those feet are pinned on. The next step is going to be to actually put the hitch onto those feet. All right, so now the easiest way to take the SuperGlide to be able to handle it and put it onto these feet would be to pull these pins and clips. This pulls about 50 pounds off of the hitch. Definitely going to be easier to move into the bed. And we're still dealing with quite a bit of weight here. It's about 150 pounds. So I'm actually going to get my cameraman to help me set this onto these feet, and then we'll be right back with you. All right, the SuperGlide is in position. It's actually just sitting on the feet. So go ahead and come up here and take a look at how this is situated. You notice the SuperGlide has several sets of holes on the side. You can actually adjust it into many positions. Now, we want it centered over the rear axle. So on your pull right instructions for the mounting kit, it'll say right here on the bottom, the kingpin is located center of the rear axle, or center of the axle. In some cases, it might be an inch ahead. A lot of the other brands out there will be up to 4 inches ahead. So how that translates to this adjustment, if the hitch is all the way into this position, it's going to center the kingpin right between the base rails, or centered over the axle. If we move this back, it's going to move everything back incrementally 1 inch at a time. Because we're centered over the axle, we're going to be in this position here, to where it's all the way forward. So you'll get these bolts, these washers. Just lift the hitch up just the slightest bit and those bolts are going to go right in. Then on the underside, we're going to put these serrated flange nuts. This way we're not using a flat washer and a lock washer. It's just a nut. So we'll go ahead and get all the other 4 corners put in like this, and we'll be right back in a minute. All right, we got all the hardware in, so all those feet are attached. Now, I put those on loosely. You want to make sure that you do them all, put all the 8 bolts in with everything loose, and then torque everything down after you get all the pieces together, if that makes sense. The reason why is you don't want it to bind up or anything. You want everything to go in and out easily. So if we put all that hardware on loosely, it's all pinned into position, and then we're going to torque it when it's all sitting in its natural position, we'll say. it's going to be really easy to get in and out. So what we're going to do, because we're using those serrated flange nuts on the bottom or on the inside, they tend to bite into the material as you tighten down. So we're just going to torque them down to 75 foot-pounds. Sometimes they need a little help holding the nut there. We're going to do the same thing for the other 3 corners. All right, I'll go ahead and do the other side. And all right, got everything torqued. The hitch is installed in the bed. It's ready to go. The only thing I need to do is throw the hitch plate back on the top. That is this piece right here. Just drops into position. And these pins and clips, we'll run this direction. Doesn't matter, but I run them this way just to keep my cotter pins on the non-exposed side of the hitch. We center the hitch up in the bed of the truck, and it's ready to go. Now this is the SuperGlide. It's an automatic sliding 5th wheel hitch. So the trailer that you're going to tow with this product is going to require a capture plate. The capture plate provides a wedge that locks into the opening. We'll see if we can get over to the trailer and actually do that capture plate installation as well. All right, when you're using a SuperGlide hitch, you need to outfit the trailer's pin box with a capture plate. This is what that capture plate looks like. Essentially what it does is it provides a wedge that locks into the hitch's opening, and that's what provides that sliding motion of the 5th wheel hitch. That's what makes it an automatic slide. So the capture plate, it's really easy to put on. You're just going to put there's a hole in the center that the kingpin goes through. And it's going to slide all the way up onto the pin box. Providing you got the right one for your pin box, it should be a nice snug fit side to side. Then you're going to take a 1/4 inch Allen wrench, and on the bottom side of this capture plate, you can see the set screw. Get that nice and tight, and that produces enough friction to keep it from falling. And then there's a jam nut here that needs tightened down as well. It gets tightened up against the wedge. We'll just give this a little bit more for good measure. Just like that. Now our capture plate's installed, and we're ready to tow this trailer with the SuperGlide. All right, we have the SuperGlide in the bed, the capture plate on, we're ready to hook up and tow. So what's important with hooking up to the hitch is make sure the trailer's adjusted nice and low. The front of the pin box should make contact with the bottom portion of the hitch plate as you're hooking up. Another thing is you want to make sure this handle is open. That way the hitch is ready to accept the kingpin. Now we should just back into it. The handle's going to be tripped and automatically close as we hook up. So go ahead and hop in the truck and give this a shot. So just like that, we're all hooked up to the fifth wheel hitch. The only thing that we need to do is make sure we do our safety checks, ensure this hitch doesn't drop or the trailer doesn't become disconnected. Really what we're doing is double checking, making sure that we're hooked up fully. Going to pull that handle without lifting it. That's going to make sure the handle has dropped, went all the way in and dropped. Then the next thing we're going to do is come to the back of the truck and look into the jaw to make sure that you can actually see the jaw in between the kingpin and the mouth of the opening of the fifth wheel hitch plate. And then we'll do what we call a tug test, where we hold the trailer brakes and pull forward, kind of dragging the trailer a little bit. And we do that with the landing gear still just slightly off the ground. That way, if anything becomes disconnected, you have those landing gears to save the bed of your truck. So with that being said, after I complete those safety checks, we're going to be ready to tow this thing. All right, one final thing that we should have done before we hooked up was lubricate the SuperGlide here. These tubes, they do require a coating of WD-40, so we're going to coat it on the top and the inward facing surfaces. And then between these two blocks here, in the back, you'll squirt a little bit in. Here, why don't you come around here to get a good shot of those blocks. We're just going to flush any dirt out, and that's going to give it a good light coating of lubrication. It's going to keep everything sliding easily. So that's what needs lubricated on this hitch. All right, well, so far this morning we've installed the hitch into this truck, or the mounting system into this truck, and then along with the hitch, installed the capture plate, lubricated our hitch, have everything really ready to go. So the last thing I'm going to show you is how the hitch actually functions. When we turn, this hitch is designed to automatically slide back 14 inches. It's going to create additional clearance. That way the corner of this trailer doesn't come around and take out the cab of the truck. If we did not have a sliding hitch in here, from where the kingpin is to the outside edge is 51 inches on this trailer. 51 inches would not fit in here at a 90-degree turn. This front of this trailer is not cut back, so you're not going to get any additional clearance because of that. Really, it's a sliding fifth wheel hitch is absolutely necessary in a short bed truck because of that, or a standard 6.5 foot bed truck. So let's go ahead and I'm going to hop in the truck and show you guys how it works. Alright, so as you can see, that hitch has slid back a total of 14 inches. So it's giving you all sorts of additional clearance. That way you could actually pull your fifth wheel trailer, jackknife the truck and trailer, and not have to worry about hitting the cab. Now also, go ahead and come over here, Brad. You can see there's plenty of clearance here. The trailer did not come in contact, is not going to come in contact with the cab of the truck. Now, keep in mind, this hitch is slid back 14 inches. So if the hitch did not slide back 14 inches, you can see that the corner of this trailer would definitely be into the cab of the truck at this point in time. So again, it's critical to have that sliding fifth wheel hitch if you want to know that you're not going to put the trailer into the cab of your truck.